soldier from York who refused to fight in Afghanistan, has been jailed by a military court. Lance Corporal Joe Glenton was given a 9-month sentence and reduced to the ranks after going absent without leave 3 years ago.
The soldier became a prominent anti-war campaigner in the months leading up to his trial, dividing opinion between those who found him courageous and those who thought him a coward. Here's Kathy Killick.
He became a cause célèbre, protesting against the war in Afghanistan after refusing to serve a second tour of duty there. Now Joe Glenton has been sentenced to 9 months in jail for going absent without leave in 2007. At his court-martial today, the judge-advocate said he'd left his comrades undermanned at a crucial time, though she accepted he had psychological problems. The soldier pleaded guilty to going absent without leave and said he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Speaking after the hearing, his mother criticised the sentence and stood by her son's decision not to serve.
Well, I'm furious. They didn't take into account any of the mitigating factors. I think this was a done deal before we got here. He saw what went on out there. I haven't experienced it, a lot of us haven't. But he saw what went on out there and it was wrong. And he's a man of principle. He's got integrity. He knows what's right and wrong.
The Afghan war is an illegal war and it's being fought with unlawful methods. And Joe has really done a great deal to bring that home to people. And I think that Joe has helped manage to change public opinion in this country. And for that, he is proud, and I'm proud to represent him.
It was after getting married in Australia while he was on the run that Joe Glenton decided to return to the UK to face the legal consequences of what he had done. He left court to start his sentence without commenting verbally, but the defiant fist speaks volumes. His lawyer says they're planning an appeal. Kathy Killick, BBC Look North.
Well, let's now get to opposing views on the Joe Glenton case. John Haywood is from York against the war, while David Pinder is a former major who served in the army for almost 30 years.
David Pinder, why is the decision to jail Joe Glenton right, in your opinion?
Well, the army system is slightly different to civil courts. The court's martial system would look at the plea. He pleaded guilty, and therefore the process is shorter. He's accepted guilt. There would then be a plea of mitigation, and the board would retire to look at sentence. The maximum sentence could have been 2 years. I understand he got 9 months, and he served a month already. So they obviously took some of the mitigating circumstances into account. And lastly, if I could, jail isn't quite the right term. The Military Corrective Training Centre at Colchester does a lot of army military training as well. It's not as if they're locked up in the same way as they would be saying Wormwood Scrubs or something.
Right, John Haywood, why, in your opinion, is it the wrong decision then?
Well, Joe Glenton went to Afghanistan. He served there under fire, did his stint. He came back to Britain and took a stand of conscience against the whole British Army, against a war he thought was unjust and counterproductive, knowing he would be called a coward, knowing he faced severe consequences. So I think he deserves to be respected, not to be behind bars.
Let me ask you, David Pinder, in the army, can you have a crisis of conscience? You're there, not to fight.
And you're expected at certain stages to express that. The Army Code, the Army Act, says quite clearly, if you believe you're asked to carry out an unlawful or immoral command, then you should refuse it. And that goes for a private soldier as much as it goes for a general. So at certain circumstances, yes, there are. But of course, you can't just wander around changing your mind or making up your mind as you go along.
But isn't what you're saying then, John, that you can change your mind? He'd been once, and that's what changed his mind.
Yes, I think so. I mean, it isn't as though he was in the middle of the charge of the Light Brigade and said, hey up lads, let's go back. He'd served his time. He didn't put anyone else at risk. He didn't incite anyone else. He just, and the Harmony guidelines about how long you have between tours weren't applied in his case. And again, he thought the war was wrong. I think he was quite entitled at that stage to make a decision of conscience.
I mean, you're quite right, John, but the guidelines are guidelines. The fact of the matter is the army is so overstretched that you cannot apply these guidelines. So lots of people go back much more earlier than they should do. That's a fact of life.
I can hear some people saying that if you sign up to join the army, you know you may be called to fight at some stage.
Oh, certainly. He knew that, and he did fight. He did his stuff. It wasn't, I mean, I don't think a man who takes on the whole of the British Army single-handed is a coward. He did his stuff in Kandahar Airport under fire. He didn't flinch then.
No,
He
he's not
just made a decision about a course of action.
I
He's
wonder
not a
whether...
coward.
Well, I think we can establish that.
Yeah.
I wonder, though, whether he's become a kind of cause célèbre, really, for certain people who are against the war. Has that hindered his case, in your opinion?
It's difficult. I mean, he's a junior rank. I'm not being sort of snobbish about that, but he doesn't have the experience to handle some of the situations he's now going to find himself in, and it's inevitable. Respect parties are on it, Socialist Workers' Party are in on it. The guy, I'm afraid, is going to be used, and I hope he's strong enough to cope with that.
You sound as though you almost have sympathy with him.
Of course I have sympathy with him. I commanded soldiers myself, young men like him, and counterinsurgency is the most difficult sort of warfare that we ask anybody to carry out.
That obviously it's going to be a difficult time for him, John, when he does come out. What's going to be the campaign between now and then? Are you continuing it?
Well, we certainly continue our support for him, yes, in any way we can. An appeal is going to be lodged. We will support the appeal. We hope very much he will be out before the end even of the 9 months that he's meant to serve.
John Hayward and David Pinder, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Now, he carried out a stabbing